es María y crucé la frontera de México a Estados Unidos en junio del 2003. Traía a mi hijo Alejandro en mis brazos, tratando de cruzar la frontera. Cruzamos por el Paso, Texas. Mi hijo siempre desde chiquito, él lloraba mucho y teníamos miedo que cuando andábamos cruzando la frontera, él llorara o hiciera algún ruido.
As of May 2021, there were more than 4,000 immigrant children in detention centers in El Paso, Texas only. There are numerous ways to avoid impacting immigrant children physically and psychologically with the immigration process, such as finding alternatives of detention camps, providing resources including psychologists, and by stopping mass deportations and abolishing ICE. By doing so, children will live a healthier lifestyle, the possibility of risk to general safety will decrease, and the safety net for affected immigrant families will be created with the legal funding made. The unsanitary conditions of detention camps do not comply with human health and public health, especially children's. By establishing alternatives to detention camps, such as having immigrants live in the community, children will live a healthier and safer lifestyle.
No room to move without stepping over the others. We were not given a mat to sleep on, so we had to sleep on the cold, concrete floor.
During the 2 weeks we've been here, they have let us outside about 5 times for 20 minutes.
With the establishment of detention camps, the U.S. is not abiding by the following laws: the Universal Declaration of Human Health, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, and many more. Most importantly, the U.S. is not following the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which states that no child should be deprived of his or her liberty unlawfully or arbitrarily. In order for the children to have a safety and healthy lifestyle, we must establish alternatives to detention camps, such as allowing immigrants to live in the community or be placed in foster care. For instance, in January 2016, ICE passed the Family Case Management Program under the Alternative to Detention Program. With the FSMP, the company GeoCare provided case management through subcontracted community-based organizations, which gave families food, clothing, medical services, legal help, education enrollment, language classes, and many more resources. FSMP was very successful. Of the 952 families enrolled, 99.4% complied with ICE check-ins and 99.3% complied with court hearings. Additionally, FSMP is less expensive than detention camps. For example, FSMP costs $38 per family per day, while detention camps cost $319 per family per day. However, under Trump's administration, FSMP ended its practice in 2017. By re-establishing FSMP, kids gain back the feeling of freedom, more funding is acquired, and there is a higher level of compliance by immigrants. Daniela is a student at USC who is currently working on her major in non-governmental organizations and social change, and on her minor in law and migration. What is your opinion on alternatives to detention camps?
I think that alternatives to detention are far more effective than detention itself, right? I think that when it comes down to detention, it should only be used for certain situations, certain circumstances. But for us to be detaining 14, 13-year-old boys who are fleeing poverty, who are fleeing gang violence, or a single mother with a newborn, like, that's just completely unnecessary, especially when we're placing them in these places that are not adequate, right, in regards to condition, in regards to treatment. So I think that ATDs can be effective.
One thing that we should be expecting from government officials regarding children exposed to detention camps and other effects of unjust immigration policies is easier access to mental health help for these children. Children who make the journey of immigration often do so with little or no choice in the matter, and their age makes them vulnerable to implications in their mental health. Children who immigrate don't only face obstacles to their mental health during their journey, but after as well, such as limited resources given their status, stress from adjusting to their new environment, and of course, the looming fear of deportation. Leslie Ramos came to the United States when she was 10 years old, and when asked about the extent of negative effects to her overall well-being related to immigrating, this is what she answered.
In my opinion, how much of a negative effect did immigrating as a child have on my mental health? Not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, pretty traumatic. A lot of culture shock. Let's see. So, as I play back on my mental health now as a 30-year-old, it has impacted a lot. So, for me, yes, very traumatic.
According to the American Immigration Council, since late 2016, doctors and service providers report having seen more children exhibiting stress and anxiety related behavioral changes, including symptoms of toxic stress, due to fear that they or a family member will be deported. Unfortunately, receiving adequate help for these stressful cases is not as easy as it seems, especially for immigrants. Racial and ethnic minorities have less access to mental health services than do whites, and are less likely to receive needed care, and are more likely to receive poor quality care when treated. This is very detrimental to the health of children who are exposed to the dangers, both physical and mental, of immigration. When left unchecked, these effects to children's mental health could spell out more problems for them in the future. Providing more mental health resources for the affected undocumented children and stopping the current waves of mass deportations will be able to help lower the effect that these children suffer on their mental health.
Well, the greatest benefit would be to have healthy, growing adults who are capable of knowing when something is off and how to fix it or ask for help. Not only that, but also be aware of your own emotions and traumas and how to fix all that before your next generation comes along and are potentially hurt by your side effects of the trauma that you went through, especially at camps and things like that.
It's important to provide mental health resources for these children now when they are still young and will be responsive to this help, especially since they are still in their formative years. When asked if receiving mental health help as a child would have had an effect on her, this is what Leslie had to say.
For me, it would have helped tons, especially because I was transitioning into being a teenager and, blending into a new culture. You still want to know where you are, where you stand. For me, it would help me more as a child. That way, I would have transitioned to a better teenager, to a better adult, and not having to deal with all of that now. If I were to get help today, I think it would still bring some benefits, but it wouldn't lessen the burden or whatever trauma that's already been, um, that's already happened. But not to say that it would not help today. It would help, but it would probably be less. It would have been more helped as a child.
It's imperative that we step up and consider how much of an impact mental health resources would have on struggling immigrant children. Helpful mental health resources should be considered a necessity for these children specifically.
No, no, no.
In 2021 alone, Border Patrol encountered almost 2 million undocumented immigrants attempting to cross the border. This is almost 6 times more immigrants than in 2017. I think that ICE shouldn't be abolished because there are too many immigrants coming in. Most immigrants come and take our jobs and hurt the economy. ICE needs all the funding they can get. They're all criminals. They should just go back to their own country.
Yes.
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 ICE is abusive to children and families. Therefore, it should be abolished. Then, we will start funding for legal help, which will create a safety net for the affected families.
In recent years, we've seen ICE detaining not just people who have committed real crimes, but terrorizing families and children that are already in the United States. And it's also the fact that ICE is a federal agency and it doesn't get checked in regards to its power.
In 2003, the annual budget for ICE was $3 billion. In 2021, the budget was tripled, nearing almost $18 billion per year given to ICE. Recently, Congress states that ICE consistently asks for more funding due to their overspending.
The funding given to ICE is determined by the average daily population of immigrants detained. With their growing demand for funding, they have the ability to have up to 50,000 immigrants in detention centers per day. ICE spends their funding on more equipment, personnel, and to keep detaining immigrants unnecessarily.
ICE and CBP on their own have misused a lot of their funds. There are people who are literally starving and dying in these places under their custody as we speak right now. So I think that there are far more intentional ways to invest those funds, because immigration in itself should revolve around human rights and creating those safe and community-based environments. And ICE and CBP both have clearly shown that they are not doing that.
ICE isn't necessary. The funding given to them could be used for better purposes. With the abolition of ICE, funds will be redirected to legal help and by nonprofits focused on helping undocumented families. By redirecting the funding to nonprofits and other immigrant services, immigrants affected will be provided with a safety net to help them live in their new home.
I mean, there have been way too many deaths going on in ICE custody. Abolishing ICE would mean families living without that fear of being deported for simply living unlawfully in the United States, which is not considered a real crime. It's just a violation. Nonprofits could potentially be used as a way to foster this sense of community, this safe environment for immigrants. Can the US immigration system truly be reformed, right? I think we have to consider that, was the system actually broken or was it just built that way?
Go to bit.ly/end immigration detention to donate and end immigration detention camps and help end this crisis.